Hey guys, what's up? This is Mr. Portillo, and get ready with your notes and your pencil, and please write this down. Alright, we're going to be talking about the Italian Renaissance. It began in Italy in the 14th century, and it was a time of rebirth, it was a time of learning, and it was a time of producing many great works of art like Michelangelo, as you can see on the screen. And so, let's talk about Italy's advantages. Some of the advantages that Italians had. Oh, and before we go on any further, make sure that you're writing this down because you're going to need it for the quiz that you're going to have later on. And so, um, the merchants and the Medici. The Medici was a family. They were a family of wealthy patrons, and we'll talk about patrons in the next few slides. It was a wealthy merchant class that developed within European Italian Renaissance, and so they mostly focused on the achievement of the individual instead of just religious aspects of life, but more on the individual life. And so, they were also a banking family, meaning that they had a lot of money. The Medici, they did, and they had, through their money and through their connections, they had very much huge control over many parts of the Italian Renaissance. And so, what they did was they looked to their past to find inspiration, like ancient Greece and Rome. And so, many of these Italian merchants looked for inspiration in the ruins of Rome and the ruins of ancient Greece, and they began to study the ancient Latin, which is the official language of the Roman Empire. And they studied many Greek manuscripts written by Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, and they found inspiration within these documents. And so many of these scholars that came out of Europe were actually inspired by the fall of Rome. Okay. As you can see, this is a map of Europe in the 16th century, 1500s. As you can see, the Holy Roman Empire, and then below it, as you can see right here, you have a lot of the papal states, which belong to the Pope, and you have the boot down here, which is Kingdom of Naples. So all these areas were affected by the Italian Renaissance. And so one of the aspects of the Italian Renaissance that was very interesting was the humanistic aspect of culture. And so there's one term, you should write this down, copy it down: humanism, which is the intellectual movement focused on human achievements. And so these humans studied classical texts such as that were historical, literature, and philosophical. And so, instead of studying the Bible like they did in the centuries before, during the Black Plague and the medieval period, they studied ancient texts. And so, they focused more on worldly pleasures. And there's a word for that. It's called secular. As you can see, then it's in bold. Another word for secular would be worldly, from the world, not of the religion. And so, the wealthy enjoyed a lavish lifestyle of expensive clothes and nice architecturally designed homes, and eating the finest of foods, exotic foods, fruits, you name it. They were wealthy. And so these are, as you can see, this is a portrait of a patron, and a patron is a financial supporter of an artist during that time, kind of like a sponsor. If you think of Michael Jordan, or you think of LeBron James, or any football player that you see on TV, they're all sponsored by these businesses, maybe by Snickers, or maybe sponsored by Nike, and they make all these commercials. And so, just like a sponsor would sponsor a famous athlete, a patron would give financial monetary money, basically, to these artists to produce these great works of art for public buildings, for their own homes, etc. and so they were very wealthy. And so the typical Renaissance man, he excelled in many fields, not only in reading but also in in artwork, in the politics and government, and even in fighting skills, combat. Also, the Renaissance woman wasn't necessarily an artist, but she was mostly an individual, a who had to demonstrate her beauty so that these artists can be inspired by the beauty of these women. And so they were expected to inspire the art, but not to create any. So they weren't really artists of that time, although there were some. And so uh, the revolution of the art in in the Renaissance, one of the aspects that brought change within the art field was perspective. And so painters started using perspective in order to show 3 dimensions on canvas. And so you'll see also realism. Instead of using kind of like a cartoonish kind of feel look to their artwork, it was more of a realistic view of art. And so you can see natural exposed postures and expressions, and you'll see in the next slide. For example, this slide. This is a statue called David. David being a character from the Bible who defeated Goliath. If you remember what we talked about Judaism, David this lived thousands of years, hundreds of years ago, but Michelangelo created this sculpture, and as you can see, he's naked. So, all right, this is a picture of Michelangelo. And this is actually painted by another individual, and the man was a man who was hired by Pope Julius II to basically paint a chapel, the Sistine Chapel, a church, and he also made a book and a movie about it, The Agony and the Ecstasy, as you can see. And here is a picture of the Sistine Chapel. And imagine that. Look at all the paintings up there. Look at all the paintings up here. You can see them. Imagine all painted by one man. It took him a long time. But that was a lot of back-breaking work. And here's one of the specific areas of the Sistine Chapel, as you can see. The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo. And here's another one. The Last Judgment by Michelangelo. Alright, another individual of that time was Leonardo, or the Renaissance man. He was a jack of all trades kind of guy. He was a painter, he was a sculptor, he invented things, he was a scientist. He dove into many different fields. But one of the things he was best known for was the Mona Lisa. Excuse me, it was a famous religious painting. And even the Mona Lisa was not a famous painting, but it was a painting of a woman, as you can see in the next slide. And so the Mona Lisa to the left, and you see the Last Supper, which is an image of Jesus Christ and his 12 disciples. And so very famous for these paintings. Here are some of his scientific and medicinal endeavors: the Vitruvian Man, and what appears to be a child within the mother's womb. Here's another picture of the motion of the arm and a human and the organs of a woman. And here's one of the failed experiments, or maybe not, never came into fruition, never came into light. Leonardo's inventions. He designed a flying machine based on bat wings, as you can see there. And this other individual is Raphael Sanzio. He's the guy who created perspective, right? Started using perspective in his artwork. And as you can see, one of his famous paintings was the School of Athens. As you can see here, there's perspective. You can see the arches, and then you can see kind of like all these individuals here. And this guy, obviously, the guy in the front is a little bit bigger than the people in the back, because it's perspective. Yay! And so Here's some writers that we haven't talked about. These writers, one specific thing is that they started using their own vernacular. Instead of using other languages, they started using their own language, native tongue, to make so that others can read their work and understand, and they could self-express themselves and show their individuality. So, and the last one is Niccolo Machiavelli. This guy was a writer. He wrote a book called The Prince, and this book basically talked about how princes and kings and queens and rulers can gain and keep and stay in power. And la fin. That is it. Make sure you write down your notes and you get ready for the quiz. Laters.